Senator Klobuchar and I met with a group of, advocates and immigrants and families and refugees and citizens and green card holders, and we, in response to the executive order that President Trump put out, we heard a lot from these folks, and they're going to be speaking to you in a moment. What I got out of it is that this order was put out in a way that is terribly confusing. It is possibly, very probably unconstitutional in that it targets country of origin and religion, at the both of which are unconstitutional. This is not our country. I would remind President Trump that on the Statue of Liberty, my grandfather, coming in from Belarus, read this: "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." That's our country. And that is the strength of our country. We are all immigrants or refugees or American Indians. That's who we are. And, when he was running for office, President Trump made one visit here, one rally here. He landed at MSP Airport, where over 1,000 Somalis work, and he basically said things that were not true about the Somali community here. And he does not understand the strength of our immigrant and refugee communities. The best event I went to this year was the Wilmer High School, or last year, I guess, the Wilmer High School graduation, and I invited myself there because the class had chosen as their speaker Muna Abdullahi, who had been a Senate page for Minnesota. And the class must have been 65%, good Minnesota white, German, Norwegian stock, and the president of the class was named Hovland, I think, and the valedictorian was part of the 15% of the class, and she was born in Ecuador, and it was 10 or 15%, and Muna was chosen as class speaker, and I got to introduce her. That's our country. That's the strength of our country. Muna is now at the University of Minnesota. I saw her this fall. Her sister was voted homecoming queen, her younger sister. After that, I talked to the ambassador from France to the United States. I said, "What's a Frenchman in France?" And he said, "A Frenchman is someone who can point back to the village his family was from in France centuries ago." That's why they have problems in France and in Belgium. Here, you're an American when you're a refugee and you get here. You're an American. And we vote you homecoming queen. That's the strength of our country. And I think Senator Klobuchar, who talks a lot about H-1B visas and business and the strength of, and we met here a Iranian American who got his PhD and works at 3M, is an engineer at 3M. And how detrimental this is going to be, and why Justin Trudeau is going to be gobbling up our educated in Canada. Anyway, I would like to introduce our senior senator, as she reminds me of very, very often, Amy Klobuchar.
Thanks, Al. Thanks
You
for
bet.
doing it. All right, come on, girls, let's get over here. All right, well, thank you, everyone, so much. And it was incredible to meet with everyone today. I want to thank Senator Franken for bringing the group together. And what has happened is irresponsible and unconscionable. You know, I have always been, as a former prosecutor, someone that believes in thorough vetting and strong national security measures. And if the new president wants to look at biometrics and some of the other technology that we think we could use more, I think that's a good thing. But you don't create chaos while you're doing it. And you don't do it on the backs of these little girls right now who are waiting for their 4-year-old sister, right, to come in, their mom from Uganda, is that right? These are the faces right here of who this is affecting. This is it, in these little pink jackets, all right? And it's a 4-year-old. That's what we're seeing repeated all over our country and all over the world. Yes, there was a lot of attention yesterday on the hundreds of people that were detained at the airports. Some of them are now being able to get out, but that is just a very small slice of the people who are going to be affected by this. There's hundreds of thousands of green card holders from the countries that are the focus here, right? And while this morning we've heard, well, maybe they won't be affected, if you really read the order, they are affected. There are people that are on student visas, college students who are maybe going to college at the University of Minnesota, who happen to be in Canada or somewhere else, that can't come back right now. There are people on business visas that aren't going to be able to come back or aren't going to be able to go where they wanted to go for their business. We had with us today a 3M engineer. We have met a Marine that's here who served our country courageously. These are the people and their families that are going to be affected. They want to go visit their mom in one of these countries, or they want to go to a parent's funeral, and they're not going to be able to go right now. That cannot be the intent of this order or what our country stands for. Businesses will be affected in Minnesota and across the country because this is a vital part of our workforce. Our state, as Senator Franken has pointed out, is a home of so many proud refugee groups, biggest population of Somalis and Liberians and Oromos, a second biggest population of Hmongs. These are legal workers who work at every business that you go to, at every hospital you visit in our country. And we're basically stopping the flow of those people who come and are part of our state and part of our country. I'm hopeful they're going to make changes, that they're going to rescind this so we can work with them going forward, but we don't know that, and that's certainly not what we're hearing right now. And that's why you're seeing such an uproar all over the country. I wanted to end with two things. One, and I know Senator Franken will also say this, that individuals that are having issues should be free to contact our offices. Our number is 1-888-224-9043. Did you guys write that down? I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. It's okay. It's okay. I'll ask you later. You have a direct line now. You're like right here. If anyone has any cases, and we're already getting calls, we know this is happening. And then the second thing is just what this has meant to our community. And I'll end with a story similar to Al's, and this was a story I heard actually this summer, and I was the Hennepin County attorney during 9/11. And George Bush made sure, he stood up after 9/11, after that horrible terrorist attack, and said, these are evil people, but we are not going to indict an entire religion, we're not going to indict an entire region of the world. And he actually sent his U.S. attorneys out to meet with the Muslim community, and I, as a county attorney, went with the then U.S. Attorney Tom Heffelfinger, and we met with people, and we assured them that if they were hate crimes victims, if anything happened, they should come forward. And I met some people who told me the story of a family. The parents had been through that time, and they were fine. Nothing happened. And then this summer, they went to a restaurant with their two kids about this age. And they're sitting there, and a guy walks by and looks at them and says, you four go home. You go home to where you came from. And the little girl looks up at her mom and says, "Mom, I don't want to go home. You said we could eat out tonight." You think of the words of that innocent child. She only knows one home, and that's Minnesota. She only knows one home, that's the United States of America. So when you sign an order like this with just one stroke of the pen, you're basically saying, you go home right now. Well, we're standing here to say that's not what we want to have happen to these wonderful people that are up here with us today, and the people around the world, and your sister that you're waiting to have come in, right? That's not what we want to have happen. All right, so now we turn to the lawyer. John Keller has been a longtime leader in this area, and he is head of the Immigration Law Center, and they played a vital role in helping our Minnesota immigrants and refugees stay in our community and be a vital part of our community. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you to both of your senators for your leadership, not just today, but for years, both in responding to crisis, but also pointing out the direction we need to lead and move this country, which is undoubtedly today more than ever what the vast majority of Americans support, which is comprehensive immigration reform. Immigrant Law Center is the state's largest provider of free legal services to immigrants and refugees who live in Minnesota. We have clients this last year who came from 104 countries. They live in 85% of Minnesota's counties, and our staff and board increasingly come from the communities we serve, both refugee backgrounds and immigrant backgrounds. I want to start by placing an additional context on this story and it's playing out in Minnesota. On Monday of this week, the Humphrey Institute released a report. It's an especially important report. We've been saying this for years and years with the aging demographics in Minnesota and across the country. The estimate is that for Minnesota to maintain its level of economic growth, we need to increase by 4.5 times the number of international workers, of international migrants, immigrants and refugees who call Minnesota home. This order and the orders before it this week are taking us in a direction of being unwelcoming and hurting not just the immigrants and refugees before you and across the state, but all the rest of us whose lives and economic futures are mutually codependent. I want to move to some of the language from the court's order last night, because I think it's especially important that the general public understand exactly what the judge in the Eastern District of New York said. She said, in granting an emergency motion staying the refugee ban, the executive order, that the petitioners, in this case, the two individuals who filed it and all individuals similarly circumstanced, so folks here at MSP and across the country who are trying to get into the United States, have a strong likelihood of success in establishing that their removal and others violates the due process and equal protection clauses of the United States Constitution. Period. Number two, that there is imminent danger that absent granting that stay of removal, the judge's emergency order, substantial, irreparable injury to refugees, visa holders, and other individuals will occur under the January 27th executive order. And finally, the executive order in point 4 states that the respondents, President Donald Trump and his departments, are enjoined and must refrain from the commission of further acts and misconduct in violation of the United States Constitution. This is an extremely unusual and powerful order issued less than 24 hours after the after the refugee ban was put in place. And it's essential that the courts continue to play their vital independent role. Us at the Immigrant Law Center and all of the attorneys here and those that aren't here work in conjunction with the folks who brought those pieces of litigation on the East Coast, and we stand firm yesterday and today and tomorrow in protecting folks who have the right to enter the United States. The refugee ban itself bans all refugees from all over the world from entering the United States for 120 days, for 4 months, period. It cuts our commitment to the resettlement of refugees by 55%. There are 60,000 refugees who've spent years being vetted, going through the process, and who were approved and traveling as recently as yesterday, and through the remainder of this year, they've had plans, they've purchased tickets, their families have sold their possessions, who will not come to the United States because of this order if it's allowed to stand. 60,000 human beings. All Syrians indefinitely banned. No clear indication when they'll be allowed entry into the United States. Citizens from the 7 named predominantly Muslim countries banned for 90 days. It suspends, in another section, the waiver of visa interviews for low-risk people who've already been vetted, students or foreign workers who've been coming to the United States for years, who are pursuing their PhDs, who, when their visas are about to expire, can apply without an interview. This will require hundreds of thousands of people who present no risk, whose risk has already been assessed and determined to not exist, to return to a visa interview. The long delay to get an interview in our U.S. consulates and embassies will get even longer. They will be ground to a halt. The solution given in the executive order is that a group of consular fellows will be retained, trained, learned language skills, and meet this need. It's absurd. New screening questions, not based on law, new screening questions and protocols are to be created for all immigration benefits moving forward. This ranges from applying for a tourist visa for a 2-week trip to Orlando to the ultimate step of becoming a U.S. naturalized citizen. It's highly subjective. It's not based on any existing immigration law. And finally, here in Minnesota, the piece that will impact people who are here is the rescission of exceptions to the overly broad Patriot Act definition of terrorism. At Immigrant Law Center, we had a 9-year-old child who was prevented from applying for a green card because there was an assumption that she could have been part of a terrorist bar from Ethiopia. The memo is written as though President Trump, for the first time, deduced that we need to be applying levels of scrutiny and security to people entering the United States. Refugees are the most highly scrutinized, most highly reviewed immigrants that arrive today. Agencies involved in their vetting, the U.S. Counterterrorism Center, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the State Department. The memo falsely equates being a refugee with being a terrorist or a terrorist risk. Importantly, the memo also only outlines certain Muslim-predominant countries and not others. If Muslims in themselves were a risk, why are we only naming some of them? President Trump, the day of this executive order being issued, went on the Christian Broadcasting Network and proclaimed that the memo is intended to provide a more lenient path for Christian refugees. Not only does he violate the Equal Protection Clause and the ideas of the Constitution, but also runs asunder our international human rights commitments to provide protection and refuge for people from all over the world. The ban blames, scapegoats, refugees, and Muslims. This is not business as normal. This is not normal. It will be opposed by lawyers, by elected officials, by community organizers, by Silicon Valley, by Minnesota's employers, by faith groups, by Democrats, Republicans, and non-aligned members of the public, with all means necessary. Thank you.
Okay, who do we have next?
Who's next? Is it Caroline? Okay, there you are. Introduce yourself. Here, yeah, I'll get that for you.
My name is Immigration Lawyers Association for Minnesota and the Dakotas. We're a nonpartisan professional bar association. And these executive orders are just such a shift away from the U.S.'s long history of a fundamental, acceptance and recognition of universal human rights in terms of accepting of refugees into this country. Also, they really, for business, reiterate the need for stability and predictability of flow of people. And again, these orders really cut to the core of that. And as an immigration bar association, we stand ready to, with our partners to, as far as we can, find ways to find how these orders are unacceptable and to make inroads to help all of the people that these are disproportionately affecting.
Thank you. This back here is great. No. Not on? What happened?
Connection?
Okay.
Okay, we got it.
Thank you.
Sure.
I want to thank both senators for giving us a narrative, a voice, and a platform to be heard. My name is Mohammed Zafar, I'm a former U.S. Marine, and so is my brother. And I want you guys to know, and I want the whole America to know, that when we came to U.S., we had an opportunity. I came from Pakistan. My grandma is half Yemeni, half Syrian. And even before we came to the U.S., when we go through the process, we knew this place would be a place where we would be able to become whatever we want to be. And that is why my parents brought us to Minnesota, to the U.S. And throughout our career, going through junior high, high school, all of that, I knew that, I felt it, never felt any different, besides the regular, tease the kids give each other. And a time came when I wanted to give back to my country what it gave to me, the U.S. And I joined the Marines right out of high school. My brother was in the Marine Corps. We served, we got out. I went on to become a community psychologist, and my kids are now growing up here. Having seen what is going on right now with the ban, it blows my mind. And I have a lot of Somali friends who look at their passport in America, they're like, it says where you're from. And one of them is the Special Forces in the Army, and he's the one who brought it up. That is not the type of thought process we need to have. That is not the type of pride as immigrants we need to be faced against. We're Americans. We want to do what we can to help each other. And this type of ban doesn't help anyone. It creates problems and confusion, and it needs to stop. And we as Americans can do this together, because all of us here are immigrants, and we do what we can to make this country great, because always has been great. We're just going to make it better every day. Thank you.
Can you spell your name for us, please?
Mohammad, last name Z as zebra, A, F as Frank, A-R. Thank you.
And I want to add what Mohammed just said. Every one of us up here is an immigrant, or a kid of an immigrant, or a grandkid of an immigrant. Right?
Or refugee.
Or a refugee. True.
Yeah, my name is Sudalat, and I came to the United States the year 2012. I was settled in Nashville, Tennessee, and I moved 1 year ago, this state of Minnesota. I can't believe it. 5 years ago, I didn't know where I'm going. I was unable to go back to Somalia. I was stranded in the Dadaab wildlife refugee camp. And 5 years later, today I'm standing in between Senator Amy Klobuchar and Senator Franken. That's only can happen in the United States, and I'm grateful all the great things that this country offered me. And 2 weeks ago, my dad, my mom, and my sister, my brother, just landed at Minneapolis St. Paul International straight from the DAP refugee camps. And I invited, as a refugee advocate, I invited 2 local Minnesota TVs and tell them this is what look like families reunion. And I first wanted to thank the 2 senators and their staff for inviting me and giving me this opportunity today. I also wanted to thank the great things that they're doing for Minnesota and all the refugees worldwide. I'm one of the newest Minnesotans who came from the world's largest refugee camp, home of 500,000 refugees from 5 different countries. Luckily, my mother, my father, and my brother joined me 2 weeks ago, just 20 days before Donald Trump was inaugurated. However, I'm here today because I'm terrified by the executive orders from the President of the United States. I'm terrified because my siblings, my young brother who is still in the refugee camp, who finished all the process, will not be able to join me. From my first-hand experience living in that refugee camp for 21 years, I was 9 months old when my family came to that country, Kenya, and UNHCR and other government organizations hosted us. It took me 20 years to come to this country. I attended my primary and high school education in Kenya, and I learned English there. I am honored that today I got opportunity to share both the ministers. When I was in the DAP refugee camps, when I was in the high school, I was the leader of the school debate team. And one day I was invited when the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon was coming to the DAP refugee camps, and the current Secretary General Antonio Guterres. 2 days after that date, I met German Minister for International Development. He was opening a new refugee camp for Somalis who flee from the drought. I told him, you're from a country of 80 million people. Your children have schools. You just come to the DAP to open a new refugee camp. Go back. I'm here 20 years. The minister cried, and this is him hugging me. Mm-hmm. This is him hugging me. He said, I will let world leaders to know that you learned English, 20 years living in the refugee camp. He told the UNHCR team, let me know if this child get an opportunity to go to a third world country or get university. When I got opportunity to come to Nashville, U.S. Embassy, German Embassy in D.C. contacted me. German minister wanted to know where I am. And he sent me a letter congratulating me, the U.S. government, the opportunity they give me. I hand over that letter to both the senators. That's what America stands for. And world leaders learn something from the United States when they welcome the refugees. And I wanted that to continue, and refugees like me who get opportunity to get opportunities like this. Thank you so much.
Sue, thank you. How long were you in Nashville? How long were you in Nashville?
I was in Nashville for 2 years, and I'm in
2
Minnesota
years?
for 1 year now.
Amazing learning English. No wonder you're the head of the debate team. And his country western career in Nashville didn't work out, so he came to Minnesota. We're going to now open it to questions for anybody who spoke, including the 2 senators.
Members of the press, please. Well, I guess my first question is for either one of you senators. Have you spoken with your Republican colleagues about this? Have they said anything to you, either in private, publicly, anywhere, about this executive order or any of the others that were signed?
Well, I've been here, really, in Minnesota since it was issued, and I haven't called them, but when we get back tomorrow, I think this will be something that we both do. Senator Klobuchar?
Well, I actually was in Washington yesterday, and so I talked there was a foreign policy lunch, and I talked to Senator Cotton, a number of people, Senator Corker, about this. I will say that in terms of people speaking out against it, Senator Collins and Senator Flake and Senator Sass, 3 Republicans from different parts of the country, Maine and from Arizona and from Nebraska, have come out against it. And so that's beginning. And when you look at the past on some of these immigration, refugee issues, we had a number of Republicans, we had 68 votes for comprehensive immigration reform, a number of Republicans that have stood up against the Muslim ban during the campaign and the rhetoric, and including Dick Cheney. So my hope is that we'll be hearing from more of them, because if that pressure mounts, we could see rescinding the order, major changes to it. We could obviously try to pass legislation, but that would take a long time as the people up here wait. And so the best would be to push for that order to be rescinded or changed.
I will be speaking later today to the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Kelly. We're going to, I'm not sure what role DHS played in this. Senator Klobuchar is right. There's been a lot of chaos since this was issued, and I want to get to the bottom of how DHS was involved and how these kinds of executive orders have been formulated. It seems like in a number of them, the agencies involved were not consulted, and that's highly unusual.
And I also would add that I also will be talking to Secretary Kelly, but at this gathering that we had at lunch, there were members of the Bush family, other people, and I just kept thinking of, during past Republican administrations as well as Democratic administrations. There's been a major acknowledgement of the need for security around the world, that we work with our allies on refugee issues, that's a positive, and that we also vet and use very thorough vetting, but that we also bring in refugees in our country, and that has been a major part of our economy, because when they come in, they are legal refugees, which means that they can legally work.
Do you think this chaos that
Yeah, you're ready to work right now.
Do you think the chaos is a deliberate strategy on the part of the administration?
It's really interesting. I don't know. I can't believe, these lawyers back here, there's a bunch of them. I think they could have looked at that order in a half an hour and said it would have resulted in chaos, because they know green card holders, H-1B visas, different work visas, student visas, and then you have refugees that aren't yet green card holders that are applying for green cards. There's these different groups, and they would have been able to read that order and figured out that there's going to be people at midnight that will be affected by it. So I don't get what kind of lawyer can look at this and not know right away that this is going to create chaos. So, maybe they didn't know when they signed it, but now they do know. And so the question is, what are they going to do now?
Other questions?
In terms of, Senator Klobuchar, you mentioned earlier about, this isn't the way to kind of achieve the aims, perhaps, of what you're trying to do, keep the country safe from terrorists. What are some ways that, in this Congress at least, that you will be pushing for, or suggestions that you would have for the administration on how to adequately protect the country while, protecting basic sort of human rights and the rights of people who come here?
Right, and we had passed some measures in this last year about better checking some of the visas from people that had traveled to certain countries, acknowledging that especially Europe, some of their checks when people coming in were not as thorough as the ones to the U.S. So if someone comes in from a country has been terrorism and then goes into a country that we have visa waiver back and forth with, that we want to check people that have traveled to other countries in a better way, and that's been happening. Biometrics, which I raised earlier, I think is very promising. It's just another layer of checking people using technology with their security, and it's something that the new administration has mentioned. But our point here is, yes, let us work together on any kind of security measure that we think is going to be positive and protect our country. That's a good thing, because technology has been giving us new tools, but don't do it in a way that creates chaos. The very fundamentals of this country and democracy and our Constitution that you're saying you're trying to protect.
Let me say one thing. This undermines. we still have this?
Something happened.
Okay, I think it's gravity.
You're so emphatic.
I was so emphatic, no Syrian refugee who's come in has been arrested for anything remotely regarding terrorism. And this is going to hurt our relations with European countries and with countries in the area who are taking refugees. And for us to take this position will only hurt us, and it'll hurt us it'll be a recruitment device for ISIS. It'll be a recruitment device for jihadis. This is undermining our security. These are people, the people that we're admitting as refugees from Syria are vetted for at least 2.5 years. About 50% of them are children under 14. These are women and children we're bringing in. No Syrian refugee has been suspected of anything that we're trying to fight against about our security.
And just one more thing, because we've outlined the moral arguments here, we've outlined the security arguments, and we'd mentioned the economic arguments. 25% of U.S. Nobel laureates were born in other countries, right? 25% of our U.S. Is it okay? Okay, good. He's experienced in this area of us. So 25% of our U.S. Nobel laureates born in other countries. At one point, a few years back, 200 of our Fortune 500 companies were formed by immigrants or kids of immigrants, right? So this is an economic imperative that we don't cut ourselves off from the rest of the world. And in Minnesota, I think we really see it in terms of the refugee population. And literally, you can't go into a hospital or an assisted living place or our airport or any really major workplace across our state without seeing some of the people that either came here as refugees themselves or kids or grandkids of refugees. That's just a fact. And we also have a lot of small businesses that have been started by our refugees. We have people serving in the military that are refugees. And it's just been part of the fabric of our life that we're so proud of, starting all the way back with our Scandinavian and Germanic, and I'll have to add in Slovenian roots. This has been a big part of Minnesota.
Okay, last question.
Well, you've got a question, so.
Go ahead.
Okay. So where do we start now? I mean, what is the plan from this point on? You guys were in there talking. Is there a place where you can tell us where you're going to start? This communication?
Well, first of all, we're in court. And you heard what was issued by the judge, and this appears to be in violation of U.S. law and of statute and the Constitution. So that's where we are right now. So for example, the Iraqis who arrived separately at JFK, they got released. One of them had been an interpreter for the United States Army, who had put his life at risk for us, for our men and women serving there, who's done far more for our country than I have in terms of putting himself at risk. So that's the starting gun.
And I would just add, so the court cases are going on, of course, one already successful. The continuing pressure on the administration to rescind, change it, and then making very clear what the ramifications of this are. They're already on TV this morning trying to clarify some of it, to say about how it affects green card holders that are legal, but yet that conflicts with the actual language in the order. And so the hope would be that that would result in some major changes, if not a rescission of the order. The third thing would be legislation. And as I said, while I'm sure there'll be interest in that, and we already have some Republicans who have come out against this order, that'll take a while. And then we also have the House of Representatives to deal with. And so while those efforts may begin, the best would be to do it where it began, and that is through the administration, and that they make those changes.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Sorry we can't get to everyone.
If you had a meeting with the president, what message would you give him if both of you had a...
Here, you guys come up here right now, because they asked me something. Come here. So the message I'd send them is to look at these refugees, okay? So, right? What was the question you asked when we had a question back in the room? Remember?
Who's Donald Trump?
Yeah, okay, so they're really not...
That's a huge question, isn't it?
So they're not exactly quite aware of all of the politics and what's gone on in our election all the time, but they're quickly becoming aware. And a lot of people in the country are waking up and seeing what the effects are when you have people issuing these orders without talking to lawyers, without talking to businesses, without talking to the people in the communities. And so I think the message we'd send is, we're here and we're not going to go away, right? Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everybody. Thank you.